The World Baseball Classic is almost here, and with the winter meetings came a flurry of new commitments. Now every team has at least one player totally committed, and I intend to go through every team and look at who's committed, who's not, and who's still undecided. I'll also be giving my predictions on how this tournament will shake out, both pool stage and knockout stage. If I don't mention a player, it most likely means that they're undecided. The information in this video is constantly changing and only accurate to today's recording, and I apologize in advance for any mispronunciations. Puerto Rico looks to be the top dog in this pool. They're the only team with majority MLB talent that have consistently made deep runs in the WBC. They're running it back with their runner-up core from 2017, and they're starting at home. Francisco Lindor returns as their captain, as well as commitments from Carlos Correa, Jose Barrios, and Seth Lugo. The ever-inconsistent Javi Baez turns into the second coming of Willie Mays when he reps his country, and I expect that to be no different as Puerto Rico are hosting Group A this time around. Longtime PR outfielder Kike Hernandez is out with an injury, but Puerto Rico doesn't seem to care, as they have interest from Tigers outfielder Riley Green and are even looking to recruit George Springer, as well as putting Nolan Arenado at first base for good measure. On the mound is much less certain. Starter Marcus Stroman has opted not to participate this time around, and after Barrios and Lugo, their starting depth chart looks more like an abyss. They also probably won't have closer Edwin Diaz after his freak injury last tournament in 2023, but they'll still have a capable staff of arms next March. This team looks to be the most well-rounded team in this pool. Back-to-back deep runs in 2013 and 2017 has thrust this team into perennial contender status. This pool is by no means a cakewalk, but Puerto Rico will have home field advantage in a rowdy baseball environment. Improved offense, decent pitching, home field advantage, 8 out of 10. In 2023, after an 0-2 start, Cuba came back and made it all the way to the semifinals before falling to the United States. This year, the preparation stage for Cuba has been such a train wreck it deserves its own video. The TLDR version is that they scrapped the idea of recruiting dual nationals like Zach Neto to their team, making a suddenly weak pool of MLB talent even weaker. These resulting moves of non-competitiveness have already backfired on them. Luis Robert was undoubtedly one of the best players on the Cuban national team in 2023, and he's not coming back until Cuba makes the best roster they can. Another player who was said to have declined the invite for Cuba was Dodgers center fielder Andy Paez, who was initially slated as one of the marquee additions. Barring that negativity, Cuba does still have its golden boy in Yoan Moncada. He played a large part in even getting Cuba out of pool play in the first place, and he's repped Cuba every chance he gets, and I see no changing from that. However, apart from that, any reports of Cuban players playing will be taken with a grain of salt after the decommitments of Neto, Robert, and Paez. Seemingly without the need for MLB players and US minor leaguers, it seems that Cuba is content to put out their national talent to the detriment of future WBC performances. The pitching will be even more of a question mark. Two big league arms will look to headline the pitching staff, Blue Jay Yariel Rodriguez and Atlanta Brave Daysbel Hernandez. The latter is pretty much confirmed, the former still needs to jump through some hoops. Rodriguez performed admirably in his 2 outings as a starter in 2023 and has since carved himself a bullpen role with Toronto. Hernandez is a 28-year-old reliever splitting time between the big leagues and AAA. Aside from that, closer Rydell Martinez will look to shore up the bullpen. He led the Japanese league in saves last year and will look to be a welcome presence, but I don't know if it's enough. A bunch of low minor leaguers have shown interest, but something tells me that they'll just stick with mostly the same Cuban league pitching that they had in 2023. Cuba was also the only team that didn't release anything at the winter meetings, so information on commitments are relatively sparse. However, it seems like while every other team in this group is striving for improvement, Cuba is stuck trying to fill the holes caused from all the bridges they've already burned. Decent offense. Who is their ace? Terrible management. 5 out of 10. After losing against Mexico in 2023 to eliminate themselves in the group stage, Canada's squad looks to be more of the same, with some big improvements. One name stands out in the commitments: Josh Naylor. The clutch power bat always finds himself performing at his best on the biggest stage, and there's no bigger stage than repping your country. He'll be suiting up for Canada alongside his brother Bo for the first time as an active major leaguer, along with Marlins shortstop Otto Lopez, as well as fringe big leaguers Edward Julian and Abraham Toro, who both split time between the bigs in AAA. In the outfield so far are major league prospects Denzel Clark and Owen Casey. Clark played very well defensively in a short sample with the Athletics, while Casey caught a sniff of the bigs in 2025 with the Cubs. Two big question marks remain: Freddie Freeman and Tyler O'Neill. Both have made it clear that they want to play for Canada, but are not yet committed due to health concerns. On the mound, it's the same story, with a flurry of decent names all being floated around, like Mariners reliever Matt Brash and Brewers reliever Rob Zastryzny, as well as starters Cal Quantrill and Mike Soroka. After those names are players in the minors, prospects that haven't played in the bigs yet, and James Paxton for some reason. It's not like sending retired guys out there worked great the last time you did it. What's more notable is the names not yet included. Nick Pivetta and Jameson Taillon are two starters not yet committed. Both would be Canada's no doubt ace, but Taillon hasn't played for Canada since 2013, and Pivetta is unlikely to play due to trade talks. In addition to that, prospects Jonah Tong and Mitch Bratt may also stay with their camps in spring training. That's 4 potential starters. Relievers Eric Zabrowski and Cade Smith also probably aren't coming due to injuries and a large workload. The problem with Canada is that they aren't a baseball powerhouse, so when one of their top pitchers declines an invite, it's a much bigger setback than it is for Mexico or the DR. Either way, Canada looks to advance out of the group stage for the first time in the country's history, and this is a solid base for doing that. But shoring up at least 1 or 2 of the uncertain commitments would take this team from pool play to championship contention, and not building on this roster would be a missed opportunity. High upside, core still intact, lots of unknowns. 6 out of 10. 2023 went about as well for Panama as anyone could have expected. They shocked everyone with upsets against Taiwan and Italy in a chaos pool where everyone finished 2-2. What was crazier is that they did it with a pretty depleted roster. Catchers Ivan Herrera, Miguel Amaya, and infielders Leo Jimenez and Edmundo Sosa all opted out. Their most notable players were Ruben Tejada, who is out of the majors entirely, and Jose Caballero, who had yet to make the majors. 2026 brings expectations, especially with the names committed. Herrera and Caballero are both likely additions to Panama in what looks to be the deepest roster that Panama has ever constructed. Also likely returning are Jose Ramos, a Dodgers prospect who raked for Panama in 2023, as well as veteran Christian Bethancourt. However, the solid performance in 2023 requires Panama to capitalize on the momentum, and they have gone recruiting. The most likely get for Panama this time around is Guardian starter Logan Allen, whose mom is Panamanian. Allen would be the marquee name on a Panama pitching staff that relatively isn't all that great. Justin Lawrence is projected to be the only current major leaguer on that rotation, joined by former major leaguers Jaime Barria and Humberto Mejia, as well as current Yomiuri Giants pitcher Alberto Baldonado. Regardless, Panama proved last time out that they could hang with teams that were superior on paper. Now it's time to build on earlier successes. Upward momentum, decent core, better opponents, 4 out of 10. Colombia has had a journey of ups and downs. They qualified in 2017, took both the US and Dominican Republic to extras and actually won against Canada. In 2023, after beating eventual semi-finalists Mexico, they lost a bunch of close games, including one to Great Britain, and they got relegated. In the 2025 qualifiers, they looked like men competing against junior teams, outscoring their opponents 23-1. Looking towards next year's squad, Colombia manager Jose Mosquera named 4 players expected to be on the roster. Brewers starter Jose Quintana, a former 2-time All-Star, and Julio Teheran, Francisco Acuna, and Mikel Arroyo. Quintana has provided slightly above average play for the Brewers, entering his age 7 season, while Teheran, at age 30, threw 5 innings of one-hit ball in his start against Brazil. While Acuna impressed at the qualifiers, it was Arroyo that established himself as their de facto second baseman and probable leadoff hitter for the main tournament. While he's still adjusting to the AA level for the Seattle Mariners, I see him as the impact player for Colombia. The offense around him will mostly consist of the same core as the 2025 qualifiers and the 2023 tournament. Harold Ramirez is a couple of years removed from having back-to-back 300 seasons with the Rays. Gio Urshela is a defensive whiz at third, and let's not forget the catching tandem of Elias Diaz, Jorge Alfaro, and Jair Camargo. And that's not even getting to their non-MLB guys like Dilson Herrera and Jesus Mariaga. Bottom line, Colombia is a sneaky good team that can steal a game from you if you're not careful. Sneaky good, underrated pitching, exciting prospects. 6 out of 10. In summary, I think that Puerto Rico is the clear favorite, but the second place spot could literally go to anyone. In my view, Cuba will take a massive step back, leaving the other teams to play for the second spot. This is a section of the tournament that I'm most knowledgeable on and yet the least confident about. Here are my predictions. They are very likely to change with new information. This is not fair. In the process of writing this, Team USA has had so many commitments it's hard to keep track. I'll keep it as short as I possibly can. If the US has had any excuse for losing the final in 2023, those excuses are now gone. Many clamored for an appearance of Aaron Judge. Guess what? Not only is he here, he's team captain in one of the first of many official commitments. Players are coming out of the woodwork to play for this team. On offense, faces from the old core like Kyle Schwarber and Will Smith bring power to the lineup, but the main thing everyone's talking about is the newcomers. Cal Raleigh and Bryce Harper supplying power, with Gunnar Henderson and Bobby Witt Jr. rounding out the infield. The only non-elite bat is Pete Crow Armstrong, but other than that, this is already looking like the best offensive lineup in Team USA history. But what about the pitching, you ask? 2023's loss was also pinned on a lack of quality pitching by those who watched. How would the US respond? By shoring up the reigning AL and NL Cy Young winners in Tarek Skubal and Paul Skeens. Enough said. It's also not like the other guys are slouches either. To put it in perspective, their current 4 starter, Joe Ryan, would be the unequivocal ace in 2023's rotation. In other words, no more Lance Lynn and Miles Michaelis. In the bullpen, Mason Miller and David Bednar highlight an otherwise solid supporting cast. It's not impervious to collapse, but I don't see a US versus Venezuela happening anytime soon. Beating this team seems daunting, but many said the US were going to win in 2023, and look what happened. They're by no means infallible, but that means pressure's on them to bring it home. Make no mistake, despite Japan being the reigning champs, this tournament is America's to lose. Godlike offense, godlike pitching. Why are we even playing the games at this point? 10 out of 10. Mexico had a year to remember in 2023. Reaching the semifinals and finishing 3rd place was uncharted territory for them. And the scariest thing is they've still got room to improve. Looking at the returning names so far, it seems like Randy Arozarena is back after torching everyone in 2023 with his combination of power and speed. Jonathan Aranda has also transformed into an offensive powerhouse at first base last season in Tampa Bay, and Jarren Duran also looks to provide a spark in the outfield. On offense, they look to be joined by guys who played well above their normal skill level last time out, like Joey Meneses, Rowdy Tellez, and the Urias brothers. However, one name not yet confirmed is Alejandro Kirk. The plus bat and outstanding defense he provides would definitely improve things, but they'll need the same level of overachieving from the guys previously mentioned, as well as anticipated Red Sox rookie Marcelo Meyer. However, there is a huge problem. There have been a couple of setbacks to the Mexican pitching rotation, as both Patrick Sandoval and Jose Urquidy haven't played at all this past season because of injury, and Julio Urias has been out of the league following an arrest for domestic violence. They'll get some innings out of Valente Bellozo and Brandon Bernardino, and have seemingly added Andres Munoz to bolster their bullpen. But will that be enough to counteract their lack of starting depth later on? I think they'll do fine in the first round, but once tougher opponents come along, I think they're more likely to flounder. Hopefully Taiwan Walker's still here. Solid offense, injured pitching, less chance of repeat. 7 out of 10. Italy looks to have an improved roster after their best finish in the WBC last time around. Vinny Pasquantino looks to be their starting first baseman, leading the charge. He's grown into the Royals' starting first baseman since 2023 and will look to lead the charge offensively. Joining him in the list of commits is his Royals teammate Jack Caglione, who looks to provide some more power on an otherwise contact-focused offense. Aside from the official commitments, Italy boasts the same strong core that they had in 2023. Sal Frelick played last time as a prospect before breaking into the big as a Gold Glove caliber outfielder. Nicky Lopez and Miles Mastrobuoni also look like potential return candidates for Italy's infield after both splitting time the last 3 seasons between the majors and the minors. Also, Anthony Rizzo is here for some reason. Oh well, could be a nice DH addition. On the mound, Italian-born Angels hurler Samuel Aldigeri will look to lead the team to glory after loftier goals like Spencer Arrighetti and Joe Musgrove failed to commit. Nonetheless, Aldigeri has major league experience and will be the de facto ace this time around. Other names to look forward to are Adam Ottavino, who could return for the first time since 2009, and Jordan Romano, who played in 2017. They'll have to contend with Canada for his services in the coming months, though. Some more likely additions are Andre Palante and reliever Joe LaSorsa. One name to watch is Alessandro Ercolani, a Pirates prospect born in San Marino, currently playing at the AA level. Solid team, lacks depth, 2-2, 5 out of 10. Great Britain impressed me in 2023. They actually managed to win against Colombia and put up respectable scores against everyone else. The best part is, they're only getting better. One important piece of that core is Harry Ford. The dynamic catcher was everywhere in 2023, and is a large reason that Great Britain avoided relegation in the first place. Assuming he and the rest of the core return, they'll be a fun team to watch even at the bottom of the pool. In 2023, they were without Jazz Chisholm as the Marlins were trying to convert him into a center fielder. Yes, he has played for that team before, and this time, he's expressed interest in representing Great Britain again. He's currently playing on the Yankees, who I'm sure will do everything in their power to dissuade him, but it's a lot more of a lock this time around. Also, Aroldis Chapman, an aging but extremely effective closer in Boston, has said if he's healthy and has a contract, he will play. The Brits can look to other players to add, but they're much more of a long shot than Chapman and Chisholm. The more likely option is improvement within the roster, and that's what will make them fall short. They just don't have the juices to compete with the top 3 nations in this pool. Jazz Chisholm, Aroldis Chapman, few solid Bahamians, 3 out of 10. Brazil I'm putting at the clear bottom. They were the least impressive team at the qualifiers this time around. They did okay against China and Germany, but against a real WBC caliber team like Colombia, they got no hit through the first 6 innings. In their wins against China and Germany, they also relied a lot on manufactured runs and other teams' errors. Chances they won't get this time around. Their one saving grace is that they were sorely missing players on the qualifiers run that they'll get to have in 2026. Most notably, Bo Bichette. The Blue Jays shortstop played on the team in the 2017 qualifiers and is planning on rejoining the team in 2026 with his brother Dante. Braves pitcher Dylan Lee was also on the roster, and he'll look to be the team's closer if he plays, joining Jays farmhand Eric Pardinho in the bullpen. CJ Kayfus is also eligible, and if they get him, a top of the order consisting of Bichette, Kayfus, and longtime team leader Leonardo Heginado doesn't seem as bad. A top-heavy Brazil team wouldn't have the strength to go the distance against any other teams in this pool. Anything better than 0-4 should be celebrated as a success. No pitching, little offense, Bo Bichette. 2 out of 10. Pool B is the easiest to predict because all of these teams have easily identifiable gaps in skill between each other. First is the championship US God Squad, second the Dark Horse Mexico, and third, the decent but still full of holes Italy. Fourth is Great Britain, with a few bright spots on an otherwise not so great roster. And finally, Brazil, who are just happy to be here. The only plausible upset I see happening is Italy against Mexico, but I trust in Mexico's bats more than Italy's pitching. Japan has been really light on announcing top player commitments, but Japanese players have been historically very committed to representing their country. I'd expect almost every MLB player to commit if they're healthy. Ohtani is going to play in some form. Whether that's pitching or just DHing remains to be seen. Roki Sasaki is for sure out after some injury concerns. Yoshinobu Yamamoto also wants to play, but no confirmation. 2 more pitchers that are also in talks to join are Tomoyuki Sugano and Yusei Kikuchi. Both would be impact guys in the starting rotation, but both are also getting up there in age. I'm afraid that Samurai Japan are more looking at this from a how many MLB guys can we get perspective, rather than a how can we make the best rotation perspective. Along with the pitching woes, Japan is also going to be missing Lars Nootbaar. While he was an impact bat in the lineup, the real problem is in center field. Japan now has no true center fielder. Any other option will mean a downgrade in defense or an overall hitting strength. Japan need not worry about outfield hitting though, as Cubs right fielder Seiya Suzuki is back after missing the Classic with an injury in 2023. Masataka Yoshida also wants to play if his Red Sox allow him to. However, the true issue biting Japan is the NPB posting system. 3 key players are leaving the NPB: Kazuo Okamoto, Munetaka Murakami, and Tatsuya Imai. Okamoto and Imai still haven't signed. All 3 of these guys are impact guys for Japan, and there's a good chance 2 of them won't play after signing with MLB clubs. Japan are the reigning champs, but I don't think they repeat this year. The all-hands-on-deck philosophy that they had in 2023 doesn't seem to be there anymore, especially due to the Dodgers winning it all this year. They'll easily run the gauntlet in pool play, but might buckle against tougher opponents. Reigning champs, running it back, multiple key injuries, 8 out of 10. South Korea has had a real fall from grace in the last 20 years of international baseball. From consecutive finals appearances in 2006 and 2009 to getting bounced out of the last 2 tournaments in the first round. Even more bad news is that they'll have some of the cast missing when they return to the Tokyo Dome. Lee Ji-yang, who raked against the top competition in 2023, has since retired from international play. Tommy Edman is also out, but with an injury, and Ha-Seong Kim is still undecided as he just got out of free agency. Switching from bad to good news, it's expected that Giants outfielder Jung-Hoo Lee is going to return to the lineup. He's the de facto center fielder and 3rd spot in the lineup. In addition, Ha-Seong Kim has broken out in the majors as a bit player on the stacked Dodgers, and they'll have a litter of KBO talent to pick from. The Korean team has also gone back to America for some recruiting. The most likely return for this is Tigers outfielder Jahmai Jones, who played a healthy amount in 2025 and will look to be the spark plug if he goes, similar to what Nootbaar did for Japan in 2023. On the mound, does that say Mitch White? Oh god. It appears Blue Jays legend Mitch White has resurfaced in Korea and is eligible to play for the national team. Another name thrown in the hat appears to be St. Louis Cardinals reliever Riley O'Brien, but in all likelihood Korea will have to perform with the same pitching core as 2023. Look how that panned out. One criticism the KBO has to other international leagues is how hitter-friendly it is. It would make sense looking at their last performance. They matched against the Czech Republic and China, but the lineup went silent against Japan, and their pitching staff blew a completely winnable game against Australia. South Korea will have to play in a tougher pool, this time with Taiwan. They're lucky to have Czech Republic there as a buffer, or else they'd be facing relegation as well. Decent hitting, key names not playing, KBO pitching. 6 out of 10. Australia are fresh off their best result in this tournament, making it out of the group stages for the first time ever. This came especially as a shock as they were without some of their best players, which won't be happening this time. Liam Hendriks last donned the green and gold in 2009, and in between then and now, broke into the bigs as a starter, switched to the bullpen, and became one of the world's best closers for a time before deciding to suit up again in 2026. Curtis Mead, the lone active MLB position player, is also likely to show up, as well as former first overall pick Travis Bazzana. They would be joining the offensive core of Robbie Glendening, Robbie Perkins, and Rickson Wingrove, all of whom absolutely dominated at the plate in 2023. Another name to watch is Brent Iredale, as the now Pittsburgh Pirate had a nice season at Tennessee last year that could see him being called on by the national team. The big question is their pitching. It was solid against weaker teams, but was neutralized against Japan, and floundered against Cuba in the second round. The question Australia is going to have to answer is, was 2023 just a flash in the pan, a perfect storm of lucky breaks in a weak pool, or is there something there with this team? Much like South Korea, this is a prove-it year for Australia, and only time will tell how they answer the call. Solid turnout, nice offense, weak pitching depth. 5 out of 10. Taiwan is in an interesting spot. They won the Premier 12 and then limped through the WBC qualifiers with two completely separate rosters. A roster with the best of both could absolutely make the knockout stages, especially with the additions of some near MLB level talent. While Pirates shortstop Sung-Chae Cheng is uncommitted, other minor league prospects have stepped up. Tigers prospect Hao Yu Lee is set to take second base for Taiwan after a solid age 22 season in AAA. There's also a pair of pitchers in Chen Zhongao Zhuang, Wei En Lin, and Zhu Chen Cha, who all dominated the WBC qualifiers and are scattered throughout the athletics organization. In addition to them, Taiwanese baseball hero Yu Chang is back. The former major leaguer gained fame and acclaim across Taiwan with his valiant effort in 2023, and will look to do so again in 2026. Also most likely there is Che Sheng Chen, known as the team's captain, and as a hard worker patrolling center field. Other than the confirmed players, rounding out the offensive core looks to be the usual suspects. Lyle Lin and Kung Kwang Gilligalau as the catching tandem, some mixture of Cheng, Nianting Wu, and former Boston Red Sox Tue Lin round out the rest of the infield. Corbin Carroll wasn't ever going to play for them, but they've got a nice consolation prize in Stuart Fairchild, who will add some more pop to a mostly contact-centric lineup. The mound is likely also going to be improved, especially with young prospects filling most of the holes in it. After shutting down a Japanese team in the Premier 12, Yumin Lin looks to provide starting depth to Taiwan not yet seen. Kai Wei Teng is most likely also going to be there, as is Pirates minor leaguer Po Yu Chen. Taiwan is in a prime position to strike. Sure, Japan's tough, but Czechia is a non-opponent, Australia seems fluky, and South Korea is coming off the worst stretch of international play they've ever had. Second place is theirs for the taking. Taiwan would be able to knock the bitter taste of 2023 out of everyone's mouths in a wide open Pool C. The question is, will they? Solid momentum, better pitching, solid prospects. 6 out of 10. The Czech Republic had a Cinderella run last cycle. After they surprisingly beat Spain for a spot in the 2023 tournament, they were paired in a pool with Japan, South Korea, and Australia. Humiliation seemed imminent, but the Czechs had a lifeline: Team China. They won in the 9th inning, and while each team took turns getting embarrassed by the rest of the group, Czechia had the better record, avoiding relegation. Nonetheless, this team comes into 2026 with a need for roster improvement, and so far, no dice. The winter meetings came and went with no announcements aside from announcing Czech League player Martin Muzik as captain. They also whiffed on recruiting dual national Adam Mako as he opted to play for Canada, as well as a more lofty recruit in David Bednar, who committed to the US. Losing Mako really hurts this team. They do have some offense, and the team has contacted Taran Vavra and Randall Grishik to play for them. Nice additions, especially joining Eric Sogard and Marek Kloop in the batting order, but the main problem with this team is that they don't have the pitching to carry themselves to wins, and their offense doesn't seem to be strong enough to counteract the offenses of any other teams in this pool. Although I love watching this team, anything more than relegation would be a miracle. Minimal offense, no starting pitching, Randall Grishik, 2 out of 10. Japan easily goes undefeated. I'm going to spoil that right now. If this team loses one game in this pool, it will be a disappointment. Taiwan takes second as the underdog. I think that they're the best all-around team in this pool, excluding Japan. Czechia is the most obvious relegation pick. They just don't have a solid foundation to compete in this tournament consistently yet. After being upset in the group stage in 2023, the Dominican Republic has come back to the table in 2026 with an even more stacked roster. There's so many good players that 45 home run hitter Junior Caminero will be struggling to get at bats because both Manny Machado and Jose Ramirez are already at his position. Across the diamond is Vlad Jr., coming off a historic postseason performance. Juan Soto, Julio Rodriguez, and Fernando Tatis Jr. round out the outfield, with Ketel Marte and Geraldo Perdomo up the middle, and Yainer Diaz catching. Absolutely killer offense, one that could go toe-to-toe with any offense in this tournament. However, like most top teams, the DR have a lot of questions to answer around pitching. Lots of pitchers have shown interest, but the only solid commitments are Sandy Alcantara and a few bullpen arms. To me, this is where the DR needs to improve the most. If the offense isn't clicking, the starters need to be able to shut down the opponents all the same. That means no more Johnny Cueto in do-or-die games. This will be a proving ground for the Dominicans. Venezuela ran the gauntlet last year, and the Netherlands has the tendency to upset and overachieve against anyone, especially the DR. Anything less than domination of this pool will be concerning. Stacked offense, undecided pitching, prove it year, 9 out of 10. Venezuela was a game away from getting to the semifinals before losing to the US. That team was propelled by a high-powered offense with Luis Arias at the top. Salvador Perez and Jose Altuve have been set as captains for next year's squad. Apart from actual commitments, Ronald Acuna also played last year and is also working on getting permission for this year, and he should be instrumental in their tournament performance if they win. All-stars Gleyber Torres and Eugenio Suarez would hypothetically round out the infield. Ranger Suarez and Jesus Luzardo on the mound, and Jose Alvarado in the bullpen. One big question mark around Venezuela is injuries. They've got a lot of them. It's been reported that the team is finding it hard to recruit players because of it. Starters Pablo Lopez and Martin Perez went down on the 60-day IL this past season, and Anthony Santander as well as Andres Jimenez were both in injury limbo with the Blue Jays. Unlike most of the powerhouse teams like the US and DR, any replacement for these guys would be a clear step down. I think that while they still could advance, they aren't going to be running the gauntlet like they did in 2023. Anything after pool play should be extra reason to celebrate. Solid core, upward momentum, lots of injuries, 7 out of 10. The Netherlands have a history of being a dark horse in these tournaments, from beating a stacked Dominican squad twice in 2009 and reaching the semi-finals in 2013 and 2017. 23 was a huge step back, as they finished 2-2 and got bounced out of the first round in a group they were heavily favored to win. Still, the old core of players looks to be back. Longtime manager Hensley Mullins was let go and replaced with Andrew Jones. Jones so far has recruited long-time national team players Xander Bogaerts and Jurickson Profar, as well as newcomers Ceddanne Rafaela and Ozzy Albies. Jones has also got Jonathan Scope and Didi Gregorius on the roster as supplemental bats to round out the infield. On the mound, it'll be mostly prospects to watch. Two in particular are Pirates flamethrower Antoine Kelly from Aruba and Seattle Mariners switch pitcher Jurangelo St. from Curaçao. Look for the two of them to stand out in a prospect-laden heap of pitchers. Solid offense, young pitchers, new manager, 7 out of 10. Israel's looking to mimic the highs of 2017, where they finished undefeated in their pool and made it out of the first round in the first WBC they've ever played in. However, in 2023 they went 1-4 and only avoided relegation by beating Nicaragua 3-1. The first wave of commitments looks strong. On the mound, Dean Kramer and Colton Gordon make a solid starting tandem, with Mets reliever Robert Stock in the bullpen. On offense, Harrison Bader is once again committed early, although he did back out in 23 after doing the same thing. The second commitment, Phillies minor league catcher Garrett Stubbs. Here's the issue for Israel. I think 2017 was honestly the best they could do. 2023 seems like a better indicator of the direction they take this year. Bader's a nice addition if he plays, but the rest of the offense is taking a nosedive. Jock Peterson is coming off a horrible 2025 with the Rangers. The other position players are going to be fringe major leaguers at best. The only bright spot on the team is Spencer Horwitz. Their pitching is equally doomed. Most of the players from 2017 are retired, meaning that a solid chunk of the 2023 core is also either gone or hasn't played in multiple years, and the prospects that aren't have either suffered injuries or bouts of poor play. Apart from the three already committed, it's looking really top heavy. They're also obviously not getting Alex Bregman or Max Fried. One thing to remember is the pool they played in 2017. In hindsight, that group was one of the weakest pools in WBC history. There's no team in the top tier of international baseball there. No DR, no Venezuela, no Puerto Rico, no Japan. 2023 is the new normal. Win against Nicaragua or be relegated. Few good players, nice starters, zero depth. 4 out of 10. Nicaragua once again qualified in 2025 after a last place finish in 2023, upsetting Taiwan in the qualifiers and going a perfect 3-0. They mostly did it through pitching and defense. Starters Ronald Medrano and Kenward Burton looked dominant as both had one-run outings of over 4 innings, which is solid considering the WBC's pitch limitations. Their bullpen was also solid top to bottom. Every single arm that they called upon was dominant. Going into the WBC, Nicaragua has called upon the help of Mets third baseman Mark Vientos. He'll be mostly surrounded by prospects, the Yankees' Ismael Munguia in the outfield, and former Mets and Royals third baseman Cheslor Cuthbert. During the qualifiers, their infield was anchored by shortstop Freddie Zamora, a Milwaukee Brewers prospect currently in AAA. He's also committed to the squad and will be a welcome defensive presence. On the mound, the Brewers' Carlos Rodriguez looks to be the most viable starter, as he's gone to winter ball, presumably to train for the WBC. In 2025, he split time between the bigs in AAA and will hold down the marquee starting spot, presumably against Israel in a do-or-die match. In addition, former Yankees reliever Jonathan Loaizaga is prioritizing the WBC when picking a new team to sign with. After multiple injuries in between 2023 and now, Loaizaga is looking to redeem himself after blowing a lead against Israel last time. Nicaragua is one of the more interesting teams to me. They're capable of upsetting the larger team, but their strategy always seems to rely so heavily on pitching and defense. In addition to shutting out Taiwan, Nicaragua won squeakers and extras against Spain and South Africa. Both games one could argue they deserve not to win. They won't be able to do that against better teams. The pitchers always seem to overperform in situations like this, but the true test is on offense. Can Nicaragua reach another level with the bat to hang with the big boys and avoid relegation? Only time will find out. Improved offense, nice pitching, relegation merchants, 3 out of 10. So yeah, just popping back in here, I forgot to record a post-Pool D part of this script. Here's my predictions. I think the Dominican sweep it easily. I also think the lack of solid, committed players on Venezuela, I think is going to bite them. And I think Netherlands is going to upset them to once again advance to the second round. Alright, that's it for the group stage. For the knockout stage, I think that the US has a pretty clear-cut path to the final from here, as the left side of the bracket is pretty weak, all things considered. I also have the DR and Japan finally facing off in the semifinals on the right side. This was a tough decision, but honestly, I think the Dominicans take it. In the finals, it's hard to imagine anyone going toe-to-toe with America at their national pastime, and 2026 is no different. I predict that the US beats the DR for the WBC championship. They're the total package so far, and I don't see any teams challenging them anytime soon.